Someone you love has been waiting to tell you this. Please read their message. My beloved child. Someone you love has been carrying a message for you far longer than you realize, and tonight, the words they kept buried are finally pressing against the silence. They tried to say it before. More than once. There were moments when your name was already on their screen, when a message had been typed and their finger hovered over send, but something stopped them. Fear. Timing. The possibility that you might no longer feel what they still feel. Yet that is not the strangest part. The message they have been holding back is not simply, "I miss you." It goes deeper than that. There is something they need you to understand about why they became quiet, why their actions may have confused you, and why they never completely walked away emotionally. Don't skip, because the first thing they want to tell you changes the meaning of that silence. If their heart could speak without fear, the message would begin like this: I know there were times when my silence made you question everything. I know you may have wondered whether you mattered to me at all. But the truth is, I was fighting feelings I didn't know how to handle. They want you to know that distance was not always indifference. Sometimes it was the opposite. Certain memories of you became impossible for them to ignore. The way you understood things they never explained, the small details you remembered, even the moments when nothing needed to be said. And recently, one particular memory returned with unexpected force. It made them realize that while they had been trying to move forward, part of their heart was still looking backward toward you. But then came the realization that frightened them most: perhaps they had waited too long to tell you. That fear is why this message feels different now. Something inside them has shifted from "maybe someday" to "I cannot keep pretending forever." They have started wondering what would happen if someone else reached your heart while they remained silent. They have imagined you finally letting go, finally becoming unreachable, and the thought has forced them to confront what they were avoiding. Stay till the end, because they are not only trying to confess a feeling. They are preparing to explain a decision connected directly to you. And before they can reveal it, there is one truth they desperately want you to hear: if you ever thought you were easy for me to forget, you were wrong. I remembered more than I ever admitted. But there is another sentence they have been afraid to place after those words, because once they say it, there may be no returning to the silence that protected them, and that sentence is the real reason they have been waiting. The sentence they have been afraid to say is not complicated, but for them, it changes everything: I never stopped wondering what we could have been if I had been brave enough. That thought has followed them through ordinary days and unexpectedly quiet nights. They tried convincing themselves that time would eventually make the feeling smaller, yet certain things kept bringing you back. A familiar phrase, a place connected to a memory, even a moment when they instinctively wanted to tell you something before remembering the distance between you. And slowly, they understood something they had resisted admitting: they were not simply remembering the past. They were imagining another chance. But there is a reason they never reached for it, and it has less to do with you than you might think. They were afraid that returning would require them to answer the question they had avoided all along: why did you wait so long? And they know you deserve an answer. Their message continues: I was scared that if I told you everything, I could lose even the smallest place I still had in your heart. So I chose silence because silence felt safer than hearing that I was too late. But that safety came with a price. Every day they remained quiet, the possibility of losing you became more real. Recently, something made that realization impossible to ignore. They pictured you hearing these same words from someone else, someone willing to show up, speak clearly, and give you the certainty they had withheld. That thought did not make them angry. It made them understand how much their hesitation could cost them. And this is where their message takes an unexpected turn, because they are no longer asking themselves whether they have feelings for you. They already know the answer. The question now is whether they will finally do something about those feelings. I cannot ask you to wait forever, their message says. I cannot expect you to understand a heart I refuse to explain. But before you decide I never cared, there is something you deserve to know. Don't skip what comes next, because this is the part they rehearsed repeatedly and still struggled to say. There was one specific moment between you that affected them far more deeply than they ever showed. You may have considered it small. They didn't. In fact, they believed that moment was when their feelings crossed a line they could never completely uncross, and now they are finally ready to tell you exactly what happened inside them that day. That moment looked ordinary from the outside, which is exactly why you may never have realized what it did to them. You said something simple, offered a small kindness, or looked at them in a way that made them feel understood without having to explain themselves. They carried that moment home with them. They replayed it when no one was around. And somewhere between remembering your voice and wondering why your presence affected them so deeply, they admitted something privately: this person matters to me more than I planned. That realization should have brought them closer to you. Instead, it frightened them. Because suddenly there was something real to lose. They began watching their words, hiding their reactions, pretending certain moments meant less than they actually did. You may have interpreted that change as fading interest, but their message reveals something completely different. I pulled back when I wanted to come closer, they would tell you now. I became quieter when there was more inside me than ever before. And there is one detail they have never admitted: more than once, they almost reached out during that distance. They opened your conversation. They imagined what they would say. They wondered whether you would answer warmly or whether too much time had already passed. Once, they even formed the exact words they wanted you to read, but fear convinced them to wait another day. That day became another, and another, until silence started looking like a decision even though it had begun as hesitation. Then something changed. They realized waiting was no longer protecting them. It was slowly creating the very ending they were afraid of. And that realization forced them to make a choice they could no longer postpone. Now their message becomes more vulnerable: I don't know what you feel anymore, and maybe I lost the right to assume anything. But I need you to know that my silence was never the whole truth. They are not expecting you to erase every question or instantly trust words that arrived late. What they want is the chance to finally be clear. Because recently, they made a private promise to themselves: if another genuine opportunity appears to speak to you, they will not hide behind fear again. Stay till the end, because there is still one part of their message they have not revealed. The part that explains what they actually want from you now. It is not simply forgiveness. It is not merely another conversation. They have been thinking about a possibility much bigger than either of those, and before they ask whether you could ever consider it, there is one confession they need to make first: a confession about what they secretly hoped would happen between you all along. What they secretly hoped for was never just another brief conversation or a temporary return to the way things used to be. Deep inside, they imagined something steadier. Something honest. They pictured the two of you finally speaking without guessing, without hiding behind carefully chosen words, without wondering who cared more. Their message would say, "I wanted to know what could happen if we both stopped being afraid at the same time." But they never knew whether you wanted that too. So instead of asking, they watched for signs. They remembered the warmth in certain conversations. They noticed the moments when you seemed reluctant to let the connection end. And every small detail gave them hope, until doubt returned and convinced them they might simply be seeing what they wanted to see. That uncertainty became the wall between what they felt and what they were willing to admit. Then came a realization they could no longer dismiss. They understood that waiting for perfect certainty meant they might wait forever. No one receives a guarantee before opening their heart. So their message changed. It stopped sounding like something written by a person trying to protect themselves and started sounding like someone prepared to accept the truth, whatever that truth might be. "I would rather know where I stand than spend another season wondering what might have happened," they want to tell you. If your heart has moved somewhere else, I will respect that. But if there is still something between us, even something small, I don't want fear deciding our story anymore. Those words matter because they reveal what has shifted inside them. They are no longer looking for hints. They are preparing themselves to be unmistakably clear. But before they do, there is one final fear they need to overcome. That fear is not simply rejection. It is the possibility that you will believe their courage arrived too late. They know words cannot erase confusion, and they know feelings alone do not automatically repair distance. That is why the next part of their message is different from everything before it. "I don't want to make promises with words I cannot prove. If you give me an opening, I want my actions to answer the questions my silence created." Something huge is waiting for you here, because this is where their hidden feelings begin turning into an actual decision. They have been thinking about one specific step they could take to show you they are serious, and it is something they once believed they would never have the courage to do. They have imagined how you might react. They have even considered what they will say if you ask them why now. And the answer to that question reveals the deepest truth in their entire message. Because something happened inside them recently that made losing you feel more real than ever before. Recently, they caught themselves imagining a future where you were no longer waiting on the other side of their silence. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because reality finally became impossible to ignore. Life keeps moving, even when someone is afraid to speak. You could meet someone who communicates clearly. You could stop checking for the message that never came. You could simply wake up one morning and realize you no longer need the answers they kept postponing. That possibility shook them. Their message would say, "I suddenly understood that I wasn't only risking rejection. I was risking never telling you the truth at all." And once that thought settled in, something changed. The fear of speaking was still there, but the fear of remaining silent became stronger. That is when they began thinking seriously about the step they had avoided. Not another vague hint. Not disappearing and returning as though nothing happened. They want a real conversation where nothing important is hidden behind pride or uncertainty. I want to tell you what happened inside me, their message continues. I want to explain why I hesitated, what I felt when we became distant, and why your absence affected me more than I admitted. But there is another detail. They have also been asking themselves what they could offer you beyond an emotional confession. Because they know hearing, "I care about you," means very little if their behavior immediately returns to silence. So they made a quiet decision: if they approach you, they want to come with consistency, clarity, and the willingness to hear your truth too, even if your truth is difficult for them to accept. And that brings them to the most vulnerable question in their message so far: if I finally showed you the side of me I kept hidden, would you still want to know me? They are not asking you to forget the past. They are wondering whether there is still enough space between you for something honest to begin. Don't skip what comes next, because there is one thing they have not told you yet. During all that silence, they were not only thinking about what they wanted to say. They were also holding on to something you once said to them, words you may not even remember anymore. Those words became strangely important whenever they considered giving up completely. And now, as they prepare to stop hiding, they believe those forgotten words may be the reason they found the courage to finish this message at all, because what you said made them wonder whether you had been waiting too. Those words you once gave them were probably never meant to become a promise. Maybe you told them that honesty mattered more than perfection. Maybe you made it clear that they could speak to you without pretending to have everything figured out. Whatever the exact moment was, they remembered how safe your presence felt, and that memory stayed with them when everything became uncertain. Their message continues: you made me feel like I could be myself around you, and then I became afraid of how much that meant. That is the contradiction they have struggled to explain. The closer they felt to you, the more vulnerable they became. And instead of trusting that connection, they tried to control it by stepping away. But now they understand something they did not understand then. Protecting themselves from vulnerability also meant protecting themselves from the very connection they secretly wanted. That realization has changed what they want to say when the opportunity finally comes. They do not want to arrive with rehearsed perfection. They want to tell you the messy truth, that they missed you, questioned themselves, almost reached out, stopped themselves, and regretted it afterward. They want to admit that certain days made them wonder whether you had already forgotten them. And surprisingly, those thoughts did not make their feelings disappear. They made those feelings clearer. I kept waiting until I knew exactly what to say, their message reads, but maybe the most honest thing I can tell you is that I don't have every answer. I only know I don't want silence to speak for me anymore. There is something important hidden in those words. They are finally separating certainty from sincerity. They may not know exactly where this connection will lead, but they know they want you to hear the truth directly from them. And there is one truth they have saved until now because saying it makes everything more real: they have imagined hearing from you again. Not once. Many times. They have wondered what your first words would be, whether your voice would still carry that familiar warmth, and whether the distance between you would disappear for even a moment. But beneath all those imagined conversations is one question they cannot answer alone: did I matter to you the way you mattered to me? Stay till the end, because the message is moving toward the answer they have been most afraid to ask for. They are no longer simply preparing to explain themselves. They are considering telling you exactly what they hope happens next, and it involves a choice they refuse to make on your behalf. Before they reveal that choice, however, they need to confess one last thing about the silence between you, because there was a moment when they almost decided never to contact you again, and what stopped them may surprise you. There was a night when they came dangerously close to convincing themselves that silence should become permanent. They told themselves you deserved peace, that perhaps reaching out after so much hesitation would only reopen questions you had already learned to live without. For a moment, walking away seemed like the kinder choice. Then one thought interrupted everything. What if they were making another decision for you without ever asking what you wanted? Their message became painfully clear in that moment. I realized I had spent so much time assuming your answer that I never gave you the chance to actually give me one. That realization stopped them. They understood that disappearing forever would not be courage or sacrifice. It would simply be another form of fear. And suddenly, the message they had been holding inside no longer felt optional. So they began stripping away every complicated explanation until only the truth remained. I cared. I became afraid. I went quiet. And I am sorry if my silence made you believe you meant less to me than you did. Those are not easy words for them, because admitting them means accepting responsibility for the confusion they created. They cannot control how you receive the message, and they know they cannot demand another chance simply because they finally found courage. But there is something different about them now. They are willing to let you decide. No pressure. No emotional games. No expectation that you must feel exactly what they feel. What they hope for is much simpler and somehow much more frightening: one honest opening. One opportunity for both of you to say what was never said. Because they have finally understood that whatever happens after the truth is spoken will hurt less than spending years wondering what the truth could have changed. And now they are approaching the part of the message they have rewritten more than any other. If there is still something in your heart for me, I want to know. And if there isn't, I will respect that. But I couldn't let another chapter of my life pass without telling you that knowing you changed something in me. They want you to understand that this is not about recreating the past exactly as it was. If there is another beginning, they want it to be different, clearer, slower, more honest, built on actions rather than unanswered questions. But before they can ask whether you would ever consider that beginning, there is one final revelation they have been saving. Something they have never admitted to anyone because it made their feelings impossible to dismiss. It happened during the period when you were apart, at the exact moment they believed they were finally moving on, and instead, they realized just how deeply your place in their heart had remained.